I am going to talk about 5 of the questions that either stood out for me or made a significant impact on me or my thought process in the self-assessment. And I'm going to start with question number 2. It says, for those who wish to become therapists, I believe personal psychotherapy, and I chose A, should be required for licensure. I chose A for 2 reasons. The first reason, I think that it's really important that us as therapists and counselors, we understand where the client has been sitting, and that means sitting in a new place and being anxious about talking about your deepest feelings with a stranger, and I think that would be very beneficial if we know how our clients feel. The second reason I chose that is because I think that counselors are just human, just like everybody else, and I think that we can have some unresolved issues that we don't know about, and they may not come out until we obtain therapy. So those are the 2 reasons that that question stood out for me, and I chose A, that we should all be required to have therapy. The next question I'm going to talk about is number 5, and it says, for me, being an ethical practitioner mainly entails, and I chose D, thinking about legal implications of everything I do. And the reason I chose that is because I have anxiety about the decisions in ethical situations that I may have to make in the future, and I feel like legally my job can be in jeopardy and I have to protect myself. And also I feel like if I consult with an attorney about the legal implications of a certain situation, that's a good idea, because if I ignore the legal implications, then I could be breaking the law, and that to me is unethical. So that's why that one stuck out for me. The next one that stuck out for me was number 12, and it is also about ethics. It says, if I were faced with a counseling situation where it appeared that there was a conflict between an ethical and legal course to follow, I would, and I chose A, immediately consult with an attorney. For kind of the same reason, I think that there's a lot of gray area in ethical situations, and it's not always black and white. So, same reason as the last question. I feel like if I break the law, that is also being unethical, and I don't ever want to put my job in jeopardy. Court and lawsuits scare me, so I would always, if there's ever a legal implication in the case, maybe even just a possible legal situation, I'm always going to consult with an attorney, I think, just to kind of cover all my bases and protect myself and my job. The next question that made a significant impact on me is number 15, and it's about end-of-life decisions. And the question is, with respect to a client's right to make his or her own end-of-life decision, I would, and I chose D, and it says to encourage my client to find the meaning in life regardless of his or her psychological and physical condition. This one's hard for me. It kind of tugs at my heartstrings, and I would be a little nervous to be in a situation where I would be counseling a patient that's dying. I think that at this point, the situation would give me a sense of urgency, and I would feel like, I don't have a lot of chances to try a certain technique, a therapeutic technique, and for it to not work, because if their death is impending, I think that the best thing for me to do would just be encourage them to find meaning in what time they have left, and to be satisfied with, their life as it is now, as hard as that may be. This question's really hard for me. Like I said, the sense of urgency that it would create would make me want to just get it right the first time. So that's what I would put. I would put D. The last question I want to talk about is also about ethics, and it says, of the following, I consider the most unethical form of therapist behavior to be, and I chose every answer. Promoting a dependence on the client, becoming sexually involved with the client, breaking confidentiality without a good reason, or accepting a client who has a problem that goes beyond my competence. I do think that this is actually an unusual ethics question, because usually ethics are very gray and not black and white, but I think this question is black and white. I don't think that there's a rating of ethical situations. I think that all these situations would be wrong and unethical, no matter, which may or may not be the worst. So I chose all of those answers for that question. As far as furthering my ethical development, I think that reading the case studies in class, in my graduate classes, and having a discussion with my peers and my professors, I think that's going to help me greatly. It may not present every possible situation that I could be faced with, but I think by practicing coming up with an answer and a game plan by reading the situations, that will further prepare me. Also, when I'm in practicum and internship, I think that having a supervisor and a supervising professor will be really, really beneficial for me. I think that being presented with some situations in practicum and internship and where I have a professor and peers and a supervisor, it's just going to be a really good thing. It's going to give me more practice and more confidence going into the future. I also think that, like I said before, consulting my peers and my colleagues, my future colleagues, I think that's going to be huge. And I think that consulting with any ethical situation is a smart idea, whether you're consulting with your peers or an attorney or a supervisor, or all three. I think that all of those things are going to further my ethical development.